What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Get this, folks. Get this. Doge trumpets unemployment fraud that the government already found years ago. Oh, we're going to get into it on this one. And this is what I love about the corporate press, because they write these stories up and they don't realize the logical fallacies they're falling into on these. This is hilarious, y'all. You're going to love this one. The latest government waste touted by billionaire Elon Musk's cost-cutting Department of Government Efficiency is hundreds of millions of dollars in fraudulent unemployment claims it purportedly uncovered. One problem: federal investigators already found what appears to be the same fraud years earlier and on a far greater scale. Now, I will be open, a bit of a spoiler alert here. I've already read this entire story, and they don't expound upon that at all, by the way. Not the far greater scale part, at least. They don't expound upon that at all. So, what are they talking about? Far greater scale? I have no idea. I have no idea. In a post last week on X, the social media site Musk owns, Doge announced an initial survey of unemployment insurance claims since 2020 found 24,500 people over the age of 115 claimed $59 million in benefits. 28,000 people between the ages of 1 and 5 years old collected $254 million, and 9,700 people with birth dates more than 15 years in the future garnered $69 million from the government. That is right. We've all heard the numbers, but hang on just a second. The post drew a predictably party-line reaction of either skepticism or cheers, including from Musk himself, who said what his team found was so crazy, he reread it several times before it sank in. Another incredible discovery, marveled Labor Secretary Lori Chavez DeRemer, who repeated Doge's findings to President Donald Trump in a cabinet meeting last week. But Chavez DeRemer needn't look further than her own department's office of the Inspector General to find such fraud already was reported by the type of federal workers Doge demonized. This is where we get into the fallacy bit. Okay, so Doge comes out and they're talking about all of this, right? Well, hang on just a second. Doge is demonizing a bunch of federal employees that already found all of this. Well, hang on. If they already found all of this, how come Doge found it still? Not only that, how come this wasn't reported way back when? And how come nothing has been done about it? Fascinating that is. This is what the corporate press and Democrats and we have general inspectors to do this. Well, how come we haven't heard of any of their reports? How come this hasn't hit the news? How come nothing has been done about any of these reports that you guys purportedly say the General Inspector's Office were conducting their business as usual? They were finding all of this stuff, y'all. They were in charge of government efficiency. If they are so good at their job, how come none of this has hit the news cycle? Wonder why. And once again, how come nothing has been done about this? Because the General Inspector's Office absolutely submit referrals for investigations to the Department of Justice or to the FDA or the FCC or wherever they may need, right? For whatever crime, blah, 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 whatever malfeasance or fraud or whatever they found. They could absolutely do this. So how come there was no investigation? How come Congress hasn't acted? How come the news cycle hasn't picked any of this up if what you say is true? How come it took Doge to come in and find what apparently you guys already found for us to find out about it and for the news cycle to pick up on the story and feed it to everybody else? Just wonder, that's very fascinating. Very fascinating, don't you think? Let me know down in the comments section. They're trying to spin this narrative of, oh, government is inefficient and government is stupid and they're catching these things that the government didn't catch, says Michelle Evermore, who will say this evermore. Sorry, who worked on unemployment issues at the U.S. Department of Labor during the administration of former Democratic President Joe Biden. Oh, that may be a key to why nothing was done about any of this. They're finding fraud that was marked as fraud and saying they found out it was fraud. Well, yeah, because nobody else has said anything about any of this fraud that you guys supposedly found. How come you didn't come out with the story? How come you said nothing to the American public? How come there were no criminal referrals? Blah, 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 blah. The list goes on, folks. It's insane. And they're telling on themselves every single time they do this. Once again, folks, the Democrats, they're not smart enough, they're not wise enough to see that when they accuse Republicans of doing something, that they're absolutely telling on themselves for doing the exact same thing. Just like, in case you haven't heard, oh, hang on, we got word of retribution. Yeah, I'm going to interject here for a second because it's funny, fascinating, because one of my last videos just so happened to talk about, you know what, if Donald Trump starts going for retribution and starts going after the very people that went after him, I'm going to be pissed. Guess what we get word of today? Guess what we get word of? Oh, hang on. Letitia James did the exact same thing that Donald Trump did in the New York fraud trial. Just so happens, folks. I'm not covering that because it's being picked up by much bigger channels than this one, and they are covering this story, and I find it very, very fascinating. And they worked all that stuff out. Once again, like I say, I always try to cover things that other people don't, just so at least you get something different with me. You know, if it's not that I'm so entertaining or so exciting to listen to, at least you get a bit of news that nobody else is feeding to you, right? But yes, as a matter of fact, you know, with the whole fraud thing where there was no victims, as a matter of fact, making Donald Trump pay almost, was it $490-something million that, oh yeah, hang on, Donald Trump committed fraud by telling a finance company that, hey, look, I'm putting this property up for collateral. I've got all this info on this property, but you guys do your own due diligence. And they said he was trying to swindle the people of New York to get a better interest rate or some nonsense like that, when that's exactly what Letitia James was doing. As a matter of fact, she was buying a house in Virginia. And get this, folks, and she put on her mortgage application that, I think it was a mortgage application, that was going to be her permanent residence. Well, there's a problem with that, folks, because this was all while she was prosecuting Donald Trump. That, hang on, if you're the Attorney General of New York State, you must live in New York State. So, in buying a property in Virginia and listing that property in Virginia as her permanent residence nullifies her Attorney General position. Therefore, she illegally prosecuted Donald Trump. And now there's been a referral to the DOJ for criminal prosecution. Once again, folks, every accusation is a confession. I can't wait until we find out some more about this, folks. That's another reason I haven't covered it, is because it's just a referral at this point. There's no actual criminal. Once we get some, a criminal investigation going, you're damned right I'm going to cover the damn thing. The Social Security Act of 1935 enshrined unemployment benefits in federal law, but left it to individual states to set up systems to collect unemployment taxes, process applications, and med out support. I've never heard that term before. I had to go look it up, but it's used applicably, so there we go. Though states have almost complete control over their own unemployment systems, special relief programs, most notably widely expanded benefits enacted by the first Trump administration at the onset, you could use either one interchangeably, of the COVID-19 pandemic, inject more direct federal involvement and a flood of new beneficiaries into the system. In regular times, state unemployment systems perform very well, not so well, and terribly, according to Stephen Wanderer. Wander? I'm sorry, I screwed that up, and I shouldn't screw that up because it should be a simple name, but Wandner, sorry, an economist at the National Academy of Social Insurance who authored the book Unemployment Insurance Reform, Fixing a Broken System. And I'm sorry, as an aside right quick, how come with all of these people, every system always seems to be broken? The immigration system, the insurance system, the unemployment system, every system that we have is broken. Why is that? Although they do work. With COVID-19 creating a flood of new claims that states couldn't handle, he says many more were quite terrible. Trump signed the COVID unemployment relief into law on March 27, 2020. In a memo to state officials about 2 weeks later, the Department of Labor warned that the expanded benefits made unemployment programs a target for fraud, with significant numbers of imposter claims being filed with stolen or synthetic identities. So there's that fraud. That same memo offered an option for states trying to protect a person whose identity was stolen to fraudulently collect unemployment benefits. To preserve a record of the fraud but keep innocent people from being linked to it, states could create a pseudo claim, the memo advised. So, that is a very, very roundabout way to root out fraud, don't you think? We find a bunch of people, their identities have been stolen, and people are receiving unemployment checks on their behalf, right? So what do? They create pseudo accounts to protect their names. Okay, sure. Those pseudo claims led to records of toddlers and centenarians getting checks. Now, once again, where's the logic in this? What sense does that make? Okay, so you're making a pseudo claim. Look, I get it. You want to do this in a very convoluted, roundabout way to get it done? Sure. But why would you make toddlers the beneficiaries? Why would you make centenarians, for crying out loud, the beneficiaries of pseudo benefits? Why not just make it regular? Like, make all of these pseudo claims the same age, so you know it's a pseudo claim. Why go well outside the normal boundaries of who would receive unemployment to do this? It makes no sense. The logic doesn't line up. Once again, folks, this is why we love what Doge is doing, because maybe Doge didn't find what they're talking about right here. Sure. Or maybe they did. Huh. Fascinating that is, isn't it? And they're trying to cover their tracks. That's what they're doing. They're trying to cover their tracks. Oh, this was because of COVID and a bunch of people were getting frauded all over the place, and so we had to make up these pseudo claims. What does that sound like, folks? What does all of this sound like to you? You know, like, I don't know if you guys have kids out there. Let me know down in the comment sections if you've ever done this. You found your kid, I don't know, broke a window, right? You went to him real quick, and maybe he didn't know you knew, and you just happened to mention it. How'd that window break? And they're like, well, you know, Tommy came over and we were playing with the soccer ball, and, you know, we kicked the ball and it hit the goalpost and came over here and hit the wall and bounced back and hit the window. Sounds like they just made all this up. Oh, but this is what we did. This is how we did. And instead of just telling the truth and just staying quiet, as a matter of fact, they could just shut up, hush about this. Oh, we found a bunch of fraud. Oops. We were defrauded too. Instead of doing that, they're saying, oh no, that's not fraud. We found that a long time ago. but didn't tell a damn soul. This would have been the biggest story. This right here would have been one of the biggest stories. Once again, because it was under the Trump administration. It was absolutely under the Trump administration, or at least some of it happened under the Trump administration. So they would definitely go after Trump on this, right? And try to keep Joe Biden out of it. But they can't do that, can they? Because most of it, a lot of it happened under the Biden administration as well. Once again, this all sounds so convoluted, like you just caught somebody with their hand in the jar, and they're like, no, it wasn't me. No, we did that on purpose. Yeah. It was an accident. That's what it sounds like to me. The Labor Department's Inspector General tallied about 4,895 unemployment claims from people over the age of 100 between March 2020 and April 2022. But another departmental memo explained the filing stemmed from states changing dates of birth to protect people whose identities were used. Oh, is that so? So now, that's another excuse. Once again, I bring it back to, okay, so why go with toddlers and why go with centenarians? Fascinating that is. Many of the claims identified were not payments to individuals over 100 years of age, but rather pseudo-records of previously identified fraudulent claims, the 2023 memo says. Right. So now you're telling us we have this paper trail of money that goes all the way out the door, and now you're telling us that, that's all fake. Right. A Labor Department spokeswoman did not respond to questions about Musk's findings, and DOJ gave no details on how it came to find the supposed fraud or whether it duplicates what was already found. Though DOJ ostensibly looked at longer time frame than federal investigators previously had, it tallied just $382 million in fake unemployment claims, a tiny fraction of what investigators were already aware. In 2022, the Labor Department said suspected COVID-era unemployment fraud totaled more than $45 billion. So what they're basically saying is, once again, like I said, they don't expound upon at a far greater scale. That was just speculated. Okay. So this is what was actually found, and they speculated, they estimated it was far greater. Gotcha. So it wasn't on a far greater scale, was it? It was just estimates. The Government Accountability Office later said it was far worse, likely $100 billion to $135 billion. Likely, but not certainly. I don't think it's news to anyone, says Amy Traub, an expert on unemployment at the National Employment Law Project. It's been widely reported. Has it? Has it been widely reported? How come I cover the news every single day for the past couple of years, been reading the news for at least the past 4 years, and I've never heard of this? Not saying it's an impossibility for me to not hear it. Just saying. It's been widely reported. There have been multiple congressional hearings. Okay, so now you're telling on yourself. So it has been reported, and there have been multiple congressional hearings. Well, hang on just a second. Once again, I used to watch congressional hearings, every single one of them, and as a matter of fact, I would take clips from those congressional hearings and post those online. As a matter of fact, some of my subscribers are subscribed to my channel because of that, and I never heard a single peep out of this, but they're telling us, we already found all this. Well, once again, I bring it back to how come nothing was done about this. Nothing was done about this. You just say we found all this fraud and then let them get away with it. Might as well. Let them keep on doing it. If DOJ's newest allegations echo its prior findings about Social Security payments to the dead and the unbelievably old, Hang on, they never said those unbelievably old people actually received payments. Those were false claims. Yeah, because they never claimed that. Jessica Riedel, a senior fellow at the conservative think tank, the Manhattan Institute, is a fiscal conservative, she's not, who champions rooting out federal waste and wrote 600 articles on the subject. She has trouble accepting findings from DOJ, which she says acted ineffectively and possibly illegally. Traub said the burst of pandemic-era unemployment fraud led states to implement new security measures. Is that so? She questioned why Musk's team was trumpeting old fraud as if it's new, because nobody else has trumpeted this before. You gotta love the arrogance and the insanity of the corporate press, y'all. But I just love the traps, the logical traps they fall into on these all the time. No, there was never anything done about this. We never heard anything about any of this. You go back and try to look through the news, try to research some of this, which you did, and you can't find any news articles on this. Go back and look through congressional hearings. You can't find any congressional hearings on this. You know, and these people come out and say, we found all this fraud, blah, 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 and then nothing was done about it. How come nothing was done about it? Once again, it takes DOJ to come out and people to try to debunk DOJ, and they debunk themselves. It's all hilarious. And I'm loving every single minute of this, y'all. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. But I think I've been on this for long enough. Y'all let me know what y'all think. That's all I got on this one. I want to thank everybody for watching. And y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.